Hey everybody, Mr. Spencer here. What I want to do today is go over a little bit of the science behind how we get cleaner air and why that's important. Just as a little bit of background, after I graduated from high school, I moved out west for a while, and one of the places that I lived was in what's called Utah County. And Utah County is absolutely beautiful. You've got the Wasatch Mountains right next to it. You can go up to Salt Lake City and Park City and go skiing and snowboarding, and it's just amazing. But what happens is you have a whole bunch of people in Happy Valley. And when you have a whole bunch of people, you have a lot of cars, you have a lot of industry, you have a lot of just stuff going on. And what would happen quite a few times during the winter is you would get what's called an inversion, where you have this cold air that gets trapped in the valley and kind of like a cap of colder air on top of it. So it was so bad that there were times when you could be on the highway and not even be able to see the mountains that were just to the west of you, or east of you. Anyways, it was pretty bad. In fact, they would have warnings about how bad the air was, and there would be times when they would say, hey, if you can avoid going outside, don't go. Another place where I lived was in Los Angeles. I lived in a place called Whittier for a few years, and I have a love-hate relationship with LA. It's an amazing place. It's really expensive and really stressful. But when I would have some time off, I used to love going up into the Santa Anita Mountains. And I remember one time going for a hike, and it was one of those typical summer days where you had the orange smog, and where you could have a stop sign that would be just like 20, 30 yards ahead, and it would be kind of hazy. You wouldn't be able to see it exactly. And I remember walking up through the mountains and getting to the point where I came through the smog, and the air was no longer orange. And you looked down, and there was this orange cloud beneath you, which was kind of gross. I also had a really good friend of mine who got a really good job working out in China, but it was in the eastern part of China where they do a lot of manufacturing and things like that. It was the pollution would be so bad at times that you would have to wear masks on a regular basis. And if you didn't, you would end up with some pretty serious lung issues. But what I want to do is just kind of give those as just some examples of why it's so important to be able to take care of the air that we breathe and the environment that we live in. One of the things that we're going to talk about here is what's called particulate air pollution. The one that we focus on the most is what's called PM 2.5, which means particulate matter that is 2.5 micrometers or less in diameter. And you can kind of see over here what a micrometer is. So if you have 2.5 micrometers, it's about a tenth of a human hair. All right, so that's pretty small. The issue that we run into is that whenever you have this particulate matter that's in the air or other places, that's going to enter in your lungs. It's going to get in your bloodstream. All right. And some of the things that it can cause are like issues with like asthma. It can cause heart disease. It can cause bronchitis and all sorts of different things. And the American Heart Association figures that just from particulate matter 2.5 or PM 2.5, that contributes to about 60,000 deaths a year in the U.S. alone. All right, so it's a pretty serious issue that we have going on here. One of the things that has happened is that NASA and other scientific agencies have been able to kind of like track the PM 2.5 pollution that's around the world. And this is some of the things that they've seen. If you look at this, okay, wherever you have blue, that means there's low PM 2.5. And whenever you get up to like orange, that's where it's the most. So take a look at where we're seeing this the most. We're seeing this in Western Sahara, Sub-Saharan Africa, all right, in the Middle East, in northern India, and eastern China. So think about some of the things that are going on. Because if you look at eastern China, that's their manufacturing area. Okay, that's where they do most of where they're building things for us and other countries in the world. So you're getting those smokestacks and other things like that. Northern India, where you have a lot of people living, and it's one of the most densely packed areas in the world. So you have a lot of people in there. You have vehicles and other things that are kicking out all of that particulate matter, causing. In the Middle East, that's one of the main oil producing areas. So they're doing a lot of refining and things like that. And Western Sahara is interesting because you actually don't have a whole lot there. There's a lot of desert. Well, think about that. You have dust that comes from the Sahara Desert and things like that. But if you look at the United States, this is where we're seeing the most. Okay, so let's kind of take a look here. So here's Detroit, here's Chicago, all right, and this is you've got Ohio, you have Indiana, you have Tennessee, you have Kentucky. Over here you have the eastern seaboard, where you have places like New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, D.C. Over here you've got Denver, and down here you've got Southern California, places like L.A., San Diego. Think about what's going on there. Well, here we have high concentrations of people. All right, same thing over here. Here you have concentrations of people, but you also have a lot of mountains that's gonna trap that area in. And this is where we do most of our manufacturing in the United States. All right. So in fact, if you look here at Mexico, these are the areas where they do most of the manufacturing. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that's kicking out that particulate matter out into the air. The challenge that we run into is, how are we going to provide power without contributing to pollution? Because we're not going back. Okay, we are very blessed in this country to have reliable power, and more people are going to want that. We're using more and more, and the rest of the world is looking at us saying, hey, we want to be like that. So they are trying to find different ways to produce that power in cheap, affordable ways. But cheap and affordable doesn't always mean healthy. So one of the things that had happened, in fact, let me go. Had to go around here. So the first thing is what's called the Clean Air Act of 1970, which happened around the same time that the Environmental Protection Agency was created. The problem was that there was all sorts of pollution. In fact, one of the jokes was that you could light Lake Erie on fire and have because of all the junk that was going into that. The Cuyahoga River, which is in Ohio, literally burned for a while because of all of the junk that was there. So the purpose of the EPA and the Clean Air Act of 1970 was to be able to reduce the concentration of outdoor air pollution. All right. Also wanted to reduce emissions of these toxic chemicals that are carcinogens, meaning they create cancer or other health problems. And also at this time, you had this big problem with what was called the ozone layer, where we were using so many chemicals that would destroy what's called the ozone layer and allow a lot of radiation from the sun to come in that would normally be blocked. One of the most important things is that this was designed to keep companies accountable for the chemicals that they released. You couldn't just dump whatever you wanted to into a river or out into the air. And when the EPA was able to enforce that, usually through fines, they were able to have some teeth behind that. Now let me get back to, in 1990, you had an update to that, which was the Clean Air Act of 1990, which gave us this idea of cap and trade. what we wanted to do here is to focus on the financial incentives of reducing some of these polluting, this pollution, things like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides. And what happened there was they established a limit for how much sulfur dioxide and NOx's, the nitrogen oxides, that a company could release. But it allowed them to buy and sell those what are called allowances. So if you needed to pump out more stuff, you'd have to buy that from other people. But if you didn't use all of yours, you could sell that. So you can kind of see how that would allow some that financial incentive to not pollute. So here are some of the ways that we have been able to reduce the air pollution. And this is one of the things that's really important, is if you can figure out how to produce this energy without kicking out all of these harmful materials into the air, you're going to be able to make a lot more money. So one of the things that they've used are what are called wet scrubbers, where you go and as you're taking all of this exhaust and having it leave your facility, you run it through this like a mist. And the mist has some chemicals in it that attach to the sulfur dioxide, and it removes the sulfur dioxide from the exhaust. All right, so that's going to leave a lot less pollution going into the air. You also have these things called electrostatic precipitators, which as you run those, the exhaust through these electric fields, it gives those pollutants a charge, and the walls, these metal plates, have an opposite charge. So opposites attract, and they combine, or they get attracted to those walls. Well, you turn off the power, all of a sudden, all of those compounds that you picked up no longer have a charge, fall to the ground, and you can dispose of them without putting them into the air. So those are just a few things that show how we are trying to make the power that we produce much cleaner and healthier for all of us. So hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know.